Let's talk about the press, pull, and extrude commands in AutoCAD. I have open here a drawing with 4 sketches on here. The ones on the left here, these ones are drawn using just lines and circles, so I can select each of these lines individually with these drawings here on the left. The ones on the right here are drawn using polylines. So if I go to select the rectangles, you'll see it grabs the entire rectangle because it's made out of polylines or a 2-point rectangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice using the press pull on these 2 different types of drawings and the extrude command on these 2 different types of drawings. I have open up here on the left, I have my 2 toolbars available to me. This is the modeling toolbar and this is the solid editing toolbar. The extrude command, if we see it right here, it's the one with a big blue rectangle. If I hover my mouse over top of it and just let it sit there, it'll tell me it's the extrude command, and with all Autodesk software, it gives us a little preview. It gives us a little write-up about what it does and a little visual preview there. Same thing for the press pull command. So the press pull command can be found directly beside the extrude command, and again, if I just hover my mouse over top of this button, there we go. It'll tell us this is press pull, and again it gives us a little write-up and a little visual. So let's start with the extrude command. So I'm going to select the extrude button here in my modeling toolbar. I'm going to move my mouse into my objects here, and first I'm going to start with this object composed out of lines. So right now my mouse says select objects to extrude or. So I'm going to select my objects because the way the extrude command works is it actually just extrudes the shapes you select. So you don't select a region. It's not like the hatch command where you select inside of a shape. It just will extrude the shapes that you select. So I'm going to start with the 2 rectangles here made out of lines. Once I've selected everything I want to extrude, I hit enter, and then it'll say specify height of extrusion, and I'm just going to type in 10 millimeters. Hit enter. Now let's go ahead and do the second shape here, and we'll take a look at what these look like in 3D in a minute. So I'm going to again select my extrude command up in my modeling toolbar. I'm going to move into my polylines shapes here and just select both of my rectangles. Hit enter once I've selected them, and again we're going to type in 10 just so we can see the difference between lines and polylines. Now I'm going to extrude one more time, so I'm going to select that extrude button again, and this time underneath polylines I'm also going to grab that cylinder or that circle that's drawn on there, hit enter, and this time I'm going to type in, let's say 20, just so we have a height difference there. Now let's go ahead and do our press pull command here. So our press pull command is the one located right beside the extrude button. I'm going to select that. Now press pull works a little bit differently. Extrude works by actually selecting the geometry you've drawn. So for both the lines and the polylines, I actually had to select the lines I've drawn. Press pull works a little bit differently. Press pull works by grabbing a region or a closed shape, the inside of a closed shape. So it's a little more like the hatch command. So as I move my mouse through this shape, you can see that I'm not selecting the lines. Instead, I'm selecting this whole region on the inside of this shape here, and you can see that the border shows up in blue. So it's giving me a little preview about what it's going to actually press pull. So I'm going to grab this top rectangle here. It's going to ask me for an extrusion height. I'm going to go 10. And now with the press pull command, it stays open until you close it. So with the extrude command automatically closes as soon as you've hit enter, whereas the press pull command will stay open until you tell the program you're done with it. So I'm going to just select this bottom rectangle, type in 10 as well. I'm going to select this middle shape, type in 15. And I'm going to select parts of my circle here and just type in a few different values as well. So I'm going to go 15, 15, 20, and 20. Hit enter to close that press pull command. So there I've done the shape underneath lines. Let's go ahead now underneath our polylines. I'm going to hit that press pull button in my modeling toolbar. I could also just type in the hotkey. If I type in press, you'll see press pull is the very first one to show up here. So you could also just type in press pull and hit enter. And again, you'll notice as I move my mouse through the shape made out of polylines, notice that it doesn't grab the polyline shape. Because remember, this rectangle is, if I hover my mouse there, you can see the rectangle is a full polyline, but when I move my mouse inside of the regions here, just like with the shape drawn out of lines, it only picks up the region that is closed there. So it doesn't really care that I've made a 2-point rectangle. It's only going to grab the shape on the inside of this overlapping geometry. So I'm going to grab this bottom one, type in 10. And I'm just going to throw in a few different heights here so we can see the difference in heights with our geometry. When I'm done press pulling, again, that command stays open, so I'm just going to hit enter to close it. So now that we have press pulled and extruded our two different shapes here made out of lines and polylines, let's take a look at what these look like in an isometric view. So if I spin that on my view cube here, so right here, these top two, well, let's look at their extrude ones first. So these bottom two shapes here, these are the two shapes we use the extrude command on. So let's take a look at the difference between lines, which is this one, and polylines, which is this one. So we can see with the lines, the extrude command, because the extrude command actually extrudes our geometry that we put on here, it actually just extruded the individual lines and it created what are called surfaces. If you hover your mouse over top of these and just let it sit, you'll see it tells us that this is a surface. This is not a solid. So if you were planning on 3D printing this, or if you were planning on further modifying this with other 3D commands, a surface will not work for that. So if you wanted to union or subtract or intersect or anything else with these shapes, 3D print, convert to STL files, surfaces won't do that. Whereas in comparison, if I hover my mouse over this shape that was made out of polylines, you'll see that it says it's a 3D solid. This is what we want. So a 3D solid could be further modified with those different 3D commands. It could also be converted into an STL file for 3D printing. So we want all of our shapes to be 3D solids for what we're going to be continuing with here. So when you draw with just plain old lines, with your extrude command, you have to be very careful that you're getting solids, not surfaces. When you use polylines with your extrude command, each of these came up as solids. So when you use extrude, if you want solids, make sure you're using polylined shapes. Now if we take a look at the press pull shapes here, you'll notice that there's really no difference. Because press pull grabs a closed region inside of the sketch, it doesn't care whether you drew with lines or with polylines. So if I hover my mouse over this first shape made out of lines, you'll see that each of these different sections are in fact 3D solids. And if I take a look at the one made out of polylines, it's the same thing. These are all 3D solids as well. So that's how you use the press pull and the extrude buttons in order to create 3D shapes in AutoCAD.